Hello and welcome to another session of Karen's Colours. I'm Dr. Karen and these are my colour conversations. In this session, we're going to be continuing on with the theme of what it is that people miss when they view colours on other people. This is all part of how one does a colour analysis, and we will be delving into that in more detail as we go along. Before we begin, if you've been here before, welcome back. I really appreciate the fact that there are some people who want to know more about colour analysis and its interpretation in terms of how we view other people and how other people view us when we wear different colours. On the other hand, if you are new here, then you'll probably find this a little confusing. Never mind, there is plenty of information on each individual colour within the playlist looking at individual colour personalities. I'd advise you to have a look at that before you proceed any further. All the same, if you'd rather just kick off here, you are also very, very welcome. Don't forget to subscribe if you think it's interesting enough to keep you occupied. So let's not waste any more time and get right into it. Now, apart from all of the things that we know about colour and how people respond to different colours, one of the things that people don't seem to realise is that colour itself is an illusion. And that is presented in no more detail than when we examine the two colours, pink and grey, which is, of course, the topic for today. Firstly, let's examine where we have come from so far. We know that colour gives us information about objects, situation, and also people. That is no more strongly suggested than in the colour of human skin. But I'm not talking about that in particular. What I am talking about is the various coloured items that we place upon our bodies to give certain impressions. All colours, of course, have both positive and negative connotations. And here we notice that the basic colours, black and white, are the ones that give us our orientation towards whether or not we're going to be pessimistic or optimistic throughout our lives. And red is the colour of the highly emotive experiences associated with passion, with action, with activity. Yellow and green are the next colours that we tend to learn in terms of our language development. And these are all about learning and memory. What do we know? How do we remember that we know it? And how do we act in relation to those memories and any new learning that may come along? Then we have blue and brown. Blue precedes brown because it's all about learning, organisation and order and how to do as you are told as a child. Brown, on the other hand, is all about your own aims and goals and ambitions and the things that you want to achieve for yourself that are distinctly separate from those aims and ambitions and goals that are imposed upon you by those people who are in charge of what you can and cannot do. And then we have purple and orange. Now, these are all about disruptive experiences. Purple and orange and grey and pink all appear in any order and sometimes simultaneously in a language. So there is no real distinction in the order in which those appear. But in terms of what their meanings are, purple is basically about magical thinking. It's about how you can fix things that have been broken either by yourself or by others through the ideas that spontaneously emerge in your imagination. Orange, on the other hand, is all about courage and confidence and being able to stand up and overcome and survive a calamity that may befall you from outside. Magical thinking, as envisaged by purple, is often associated too with fears and dreads about things that haven't happened yet, whereas orange is almost always associated with what it is that has actually happened. This session presents pink and grey. Now, purple and grey are two colors that often Now, pink and grey, two colours that offer an open-ended potential to a person's life. They are also linked to the extremes of the lifespan. So often pink is associated with very young things, with newborn things. We know that most mammals are very pinkish in their appearance at birth. Of course, later on, we differentiate the person's sex by choosing the colour pink for a particular purpose. But that's not the point. The point is that we see all young things, regardless of what they are, as being fragile, that their life is easily extinguished, and that is part of what occurs in the way in which we conceptualize colour pink. Grey, on the other hand, offers open-ended potentials in that it is associated with old age. It is associated with the end of the lifespan, where things are given in review, where we examine what it is that we have accomplished, and from there work out what we can do to either remedy or rectify what we've done wrong, or else just live with the consequences. Either way, both pink and grey are all about the lifespan. So what happens when we observe the colour pink? Well, firstly, pink is originally seen as the fading of the colour red. It is sunlight and laundering, and it's susceptible to UV light. So red often fades to pink when it is exposed to those sorts of extremes. Red is the colour that is most likely to fade if that's the colour that you've chosen for your car, for example, particularly if it's left out in sunlight. Pink links to red historically because it was considered a manly colour and so therefore suitable for young gentlemen, showing that their red, their vitality, their life, their energy was all bound up in an ability to present some of that, but at the same time to have it reduced. They weren't for men. So it was considered to be good for male infants particularly, and so young men and boys also wore it as a sign of their growing maturity. It was reassigned as a colour for little girls after World War II. And just why this switch happened, we really don't know. But certainly by the 1970s, it was well established as the colour that was linked to weakness, femininity, the need for protection, and of course, to this day, pink now belongs to little girls. Pink, in its association with weakness, is a colour that was used extensively in Japanese jails at one time to give recalcitrant prisoners the slowing down of their energy. It was found that when one puts people into a pink environment, their energy is sapped, their anger reduces. In the United States, pink is often referred to in the penal system as drunk tank pink. That is, we put people who are intoxicated and rather angry into a pink room and it reduces their aggression. Grey, on the other hand, is linked more to the degradation of black and white. Black, when it's exposed to the elements, eventually fades to grey, and white becomes greyish when it ages because it loses some of the luster that is associated with white. But once it gets to the grey stage, it really does resist fading any further. So grey never becomes white again once it has been established as a colour. It also links to silver, and that gives an appearance of wealth and power. If we look at the way in which grey is marketed, particularly through electronics, silver is an extremely popular colour backed only by grey as colours for technology. It was also adopted as the sign of sophistication, mainly as an idea of minimalism. If you don't have a lot of bright colours in your environment, then you give the appearance of being in control of everything around you. And so it's also linked to the ideas of objectivity, rationality, and fairness. Much of that, of course, is illusory. So both of these colors associate with that same illusion in terms of social potentials. Pink induces compassion and caregiving, whereas gray distances itself from emotional concerns. Let's now examine both those colors in some more detail. Pink as a concept invites attention because it has links to the color red, but it's associated with passivity. There is a lack of energy, which tends to suggest the ideas of weakness. Pink has energy within it, but the energy is not as strong as red, and so we consider it to be more passive. There's also a lack of power associated with pink, and as the aforementioned inmates within prisons have found out, that pink uniforms or rooms into which they are placed often reduces their ability to fight. Pink is also associated with limited life experience. We associate it with youth and infancy, and also with immaturity and childishness. There is a naivety and innocence that is associated with the color pink, and we tend to feel rather protective about people wearing this color. There is an emergent, fragile life force that is associated with the color pink, and this life force is considered to be easily snubbed out. And so we tend to have, again, protective emotions, protective activities that are associated with people who wear this color. As such, it's also a color that is often associated with weakened life forces that occur during illness. Pink itself symbolizes compassion and love, and now in the 21st century, femininity and playfulness. Its effect on humans is to sympathize, to calm them down, to nurture what life spark there is, and also to offer comfort to those who need to wear pink. The positive aspects are all about kindness and warmth and romance, and also some form of intuition. Babies are highly intuitive. They will take instant likes or dislikes to certain activities, people, and places, and often these intuitive reactions are quite well grounded in some sort of reality that maybe adults are unaware of. The negative aspects of the color pink are a hyper-emotionality, timidity, immaturity, of course, and the fact that children in pink are not very confident in their activities. So they tend to hang back rather than become directly and actively involved. Now, grey as a concept epitomizes neutrality. It is the midpoint between black and white. And so it has the opportunity to offer both the secrecy associated with black and the full glaring awareness that's associated with white, but it clouds both. So that neutrality is all about maintaining a balance. There is an emotional blandness or absence that occurs. A person wearing grey is considered to be balanced and objective in what it is that they are doing, but there is also an indifference attached to this. It's as though when one uses grey extensively, there is no real emotional attachment to whatever is happening in their lives and whatever it is they are doing. They are, in fact, detached. It also tends to suggest there is some extensive life experience that is being presented here with the color grey. The person wearing it is stable. They have achieved whatever it is they're going to achieve within their lives, up to that point, of course, and hence we don't tend to use grey a great deal in children. They are reflective, there is wisdom attached to grey, and there is a hidden power that occurs with the wearing of grey. You don't know when you're seeing someone in grey just what they will do, because they're giving you no colour clues as to what is going to happen next and where they are likely to take themselves. Grey itself symbolizes compromise. It symbolizes neutrality, control over the environment and themselves, and also a practicality that occurs as a result of lessons learned. The effects are all about stability. Grey has the effect of calming people, but not quite to the same way that pink does. It relaxes because there is no way of ensuring that there is a particular colour thrust that impinges upon a person's consciousness. And so it is a very soothing colour as well. The positive aspects of grey are a certain degree of reliability. We know what to expect when one wears grey. This person is not going to be overly emotional. There is a maturity and an intellect that's associated with grey, and generally, politically, some fairly conservative values. The negative side of grey is a degree of pessimism and sadness. As we age, we tend to look back, reflecting on our lives, and it is possible to have a great deal of regret about what it is that we've done and what it is that we haven't done as we get older. There is also a tendency towards indecision, and of course, grey is exceedingly unemotional. So as mentioned at the beginning, pink and grey in action are both illusions. Pink tends to hide its survival potential under a veneer of vulnerability. An adult wearing pink often attracts attention and assistance from others, even when it is not warranted. Grey, on the other hand, tends to hide their emotional state. There is a rigidity and a conformity that occurs with grey wearers. It's as though they're walking on a tightrope and they cannot move in one direction or another. Both tend to receive attention from others as a result. Pink operates through playfulness and melodrama. In other words, we have fun, but also if we don't get what we want, there's a lot of crying and screaming and pretending that the world is ending. Grey, on the other hand, presents as fairly sophisticated. Nevertheless, that sophistication attracts attention because it invites ideas of this person being resource rich. And indeed, in terms of wisdom, those resources are definitely plentiful. In terms of sophistication, however, it's often that the choice of grey comes as a result of wealthy people deciding to take on a minimalist palette for their homes and surroundings. Both colours, pink and grey, provoke specific outcomes. Pink tends to invite protection and assistance in order to survive a particular catastrophe, calamity, or even life itself, whereas grey tends to produce self-protective actions, and it does this through invisibility. Grey can hide quite effectively. So what then happens when someone appears in both colours? Well, this depends, once again, on where each of the colours appears. On a positive side, someone who is wearing pink near their face and grey further down tends to have a lot of love and compassion that's offered indiscriminately to all comers. The pink itself is the love and compassion that appears as an action that can be carried out, and the grey is the balanced ethic and inability to judge motivations that comes from the indecision that occurs as a result of grey in the internal world. On the other hand, the negative aspects of this particular combination is that the grey in the internal world shows confused and unregulated thinking, which in fact comes through as pink in the real world, someone who is demanding and childish, and their efforts to control others comes through the development of tantrum behavior. Reversing these colours, where grey appears closer to the face and pink further down the body, again, we have both positive and negative attributions. The positive is that the grey in the real world shows that this person has stable and intelligent presentation of their ideas. They have thought things through carefully. And the pink internally is all about self-sacrificing urge to support others. Now, unfortunately, also, although this is a positive thing, it often means that this person cannot refuse to answer the sorts of questions that are being thrown at them. So a person wearing pink as a driver often finds themselves being stuck, having to explain themselves without necessarily being in charge of how they will explain and where those actions will take place. On the other hand, the negative aspects of grey over pink are that the grey is all about rigid, bland, dull thinking and behaviour. So the person is very much middle of the road, not prepared to engage, just simply sits and observes or disengages. The pink internally, on the other hand, is all about someone who is driven by selfish and demanding behaviours and urges without really wanting to contribute. So this person wants to be seen, wants to be loved, wants to be cared for, but in the real world doesn't offer anything in order for others to not even notice that they're there, but also not allowing others to engage with them in a way that lets their needs and drives be noticed. So as an experiment, which of these people would you prefer as a partner? Someone who is pink through and through, someone who is grey through and through, someone who is pink over grey, or someone who is grey over pink. You might like to observe people wearing pink and grey over the next week or so, and just establish what sorts of behaviours do you see unfolding. How do others respond to you when you wear those colours? Are you given unwarranted and unwanted assistance from people when you are wearing pink? Often you'll find that when you wear pink, people will smile at you, strangers in particular. That can be quite disconcerting. On the other hand, if you're wearing grey, you may even find yourself being overlooked at a checkout. People just don't see you. But that's been my experience. What's yours? So let's now look at conclusions. People tend to show their capabilities and their limitations through the colours that they wear. The colours we put on our bodies are a choice. It may be a limited choice because we don't have a great variety of colours to choose from, but nevertheless, we rarely put colours onto our bodies that we actively dislike or don't want to engage with. Some colours, of course, are more clearly definable than others, and pink and grey are particularly difficult to define because they have such wide-ranging meanings. They are an illusion. Infancy, as designated by pink, and the elderly, as designated by grey, demonstrate that the life cycle is seen as a continuous object between these two colours. The next colour that we have in language development, which does not actually appear as a basic colour term, but it's the one we will be examining in the next video of this series, is the colour cyan. Cyan tends to denote some sort of peaceful coexistence, and maybe that's something we're all striving to as a human species. Maybe it's not before time. And there we have it. Pink and grey, two colours that can be very difficult to put together. If you've been following my colour scopes over the last few months, you might have noticed that pink and grey quite often don't appear as colours within a reading. They certainly were the colours that I chose as the most appropriate and least appropriate for myself during the month of July. And the effect that those two colours had on me was that I spent a lot of time procrastinating and feeling as though I didn't have the energy or wherewithal to even continue with this series, or for that matter, with the channel as such. Now, for me, and I'm generally a highly motivated person, the use of those two colors was a bit of a shock. That, of course, has changed now for August. And finally, it seems as though whatever blockage there was has now been released. But that's my experience. What is yours when you use those two colors? Anyway, may the colors of your life bring you the joy, the happiness, and also the thinking in terms of what color represents that will guide you towards your own higher good. Until next time, I'll catch you. Bye.